Hello students, today we're going to start with the agenda by checking homework, factoring simple polynomials, and your homework will be 10.4. So students will be able to factor polynomials by using the diamond or just directly. So I'm going to show you a table that we're going to be using, and I'm going to show it again as we go in the lesson because we're going to be coming back to it a lot. But I want you to write it down, so pause it if you need to, but I'll use it as we go, and so it would look a little like that, okay? And right now I know you have no idea what you're looking at, but take a minute to write that and then pause it and also take note of that second part. And again, it will make sense once we use them, okay? Okay, so if you're given a trinomial, it's like saying this is the area of a rectangle. The area is equals to x squared plus 4x plus 3. You want to look for the dimensions of that, not square, but rectangle actually. So what are the measurements of the two sides? And so the two factors that we come up, we need to figure out what are those measurements. So this is where our diamond comes in. Okay? In this diamond, and at first it's not going to make sense, but in this diamond, you're going to put the constant in here, which is 3. At the bottom part of the diamond, you're going to put the 4. And we're going to look for two factors of 3 that when you add them, you get 4. So what are factors of 3? And when I said that you're going to be solving by the diamond or directly just means find two factors of 3 that when you add them equals 4. So it will be just 1 times 3 is 3 and 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay, that will be directly. In here, again, you're looking for two numbers that multiplied, when we multiply those two numbers is 3, but when we add those two numbers is equals to 4. Again, it's 1 times 3 equals 3 and 1 plus 3 equals 4. Okay, so for these factors that I have in here, I'm going to put x and x, and then I'm going to use those two factors that I use, so plus 1 plus 3. Okay, and that will be the answer basically. Now you can always check to make sure that your answer is correct. We already know that this comes from first of FOIL, that this factor comes from last in FOIL, and that this is the combining like terms of the outside and inside factors. So x times 3 is 3x, 1 times x is 1x, and so when we put this together or combine this, is 3x plus x equals 4x. So check. That's a way of checking really fast to make sure that I have the right answer. Now, what does this relate to the initial page that I showed you? I said that if this is positive and this is positive, look at this right here. If this is positive, both factors need to be positive, and we're going to add them to get this number in here. Again, both factors, let me put them side by side. Both of the factors, because both of these are positive, both factors need to be positive, so that's why these are positive. And we add them. 3 plus 1 is 4. Okay, so that's how this table relates. Okay, and we're going to be coming back to this. Okay, another example. It's x squared plus 4x plus 4. Again, you can do it directly. So you can just look for two factors that multiply equals 4, but when you add them equals to 4 as well. So you know that it's 2 and 2. You just open your parentheses and you put x and x and 2 and 2. That will be directly. If you were using the diamond, this number goes over here, which is the 4. The one in the middle term, or the one that has x, goes in here, but just the number, just the coefficient. And then if we look at these, both are positive. So we look at this diamond, both are positive. That means that both of my factors will be positive, and we're going to add them to get the bottom one. So there are other possible factors. Some people would say, oh, 1 times 4. But then when you add 1 plus 4, you don't get 4, you get 5. Okay, so it would be 2 times 2 equals 4, and 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we just put that in there. And remember that to check, to make sure the middle comes from multiplying, I call it the happy face, makes the nose, because it's in the middle of these three terms. Happy face should make the nose. So 2 times x is 2x, x times 2 is 2x, and 2x plus 2x is 4x right here. Another example. Now, for those of you who are making or just looking at seeing what numbers multiply equals 32 and see if, like, you can do even this mentally. 1 times 32, you wouldn't get that because it would be 33. Or 2 times 16, when you add them, is 18, not 12. The next one is 4 times 8. That's 32, but when you add them equals 12x, so that's it. Okay, that will be directly. Some of you would do it in your mind, and you would just say x plus 8, x plus 4. And you can notice that I put the first one on the second and the second one on the first one. It doesn't matter. The order doesn't really matter if we don't have any coefficients in here. We're later going to look at those, but if we don't have, these are simple. It doesn't matter if you put the 4 here or here. Okay. With the diamond, you would put again the 32 on top because it's the last number, and then the middle one at the bottom. So what 2 multiply equals 32? Again, you can do the list and see that since both are positive, again, both factors need to be positive, and we're going to add them. So 4 times 8 is 32, and 4 plus 8 equals 12. Okay. Again, if you want to check, 8 times x is 8x. X times 4 is 4x. Together they make the 12x. Okay, you have another one in here. Again, this is the total area of the rectangle. What is the dimensions of that rectangle? Again, you know that you're going to be having two factors, and each one of these represents the length or the width, okay, of the rectangle. We know because these are simple, it doesn't have a coefficient, that you have xx, that we're going to look for the numbers that when you multiply them equals 18, but when you add them equals 9. It's going to be 1 times 18, 2 times 9, or 3 times 6. And we notice that when we add this, the only one that gives me 9 is 3 times 6. So my answers will be x plus 3, x plus 6. This is one of the sides of the rectangle. This is the measurement of the other side of the rectangle. Okay, if we were doing it with the diamond, again, both are positive, so both are going to be, the two factors are going to be positive. And so we already know that it's 3 times 6 equals 18, but 3 plus 6 equals 9. Okay. Again, if you want to check, you don't have to do this part, but the way to check is 3 times, do the outside and inside of FOIL. So 3 times x is 3x, and x times 6 is 6x, which makes a total of 9x. Okay, so these are correct. Now, here comes a small challenge. So far, we're being using only positives for both the middle coefficient and the constant number. But now we have a negative. And I want you to go back to what we have in here. If we have a positive and a negative, it says that both factors need, both factors need to be negative, because when you multiply two negatives, the answer will be positive, right? But if you add negatives, the answer will be negative. So that's why, since you have a positive and you have a negative, you need two numbers that are negative. Okay, and we add them. Remember that when we have, in addition, when we have the same signs, we add them and keep the signs. Okay, so what did he say? We need two negatives to make it positive. And so what are the factors of 2? So it can be 1 and 2, but again, we know that we need to know that they're negative. So it's going to be -1 and -2. Okay, and if we add them, 1 plus 2 is 3, and it's -3. So my factors are going to be x minus 1, x minus 2. Okay, if we want to check, -1 times x is -x, x times -2 is -2x, and together, if I owe 1x and I owe 2x, that means that I owe a total of 3x, which is check. Remember that you can pause it at any time if you need to, or go back if you need to review something that you didn't completely get, or just continue and repeat it until the end, because maybe the next one might help you. So in here we will have positive 10. In the bottom we will have -7, and this is we're finding two factors that equals to positive. Again, positive, but then we have a negative at the bottom, so we're gonna have both factors being negative, and we're gonna add them to get the one in the bottom. So both need to be negative. And what two numbers, and remember we have to add them. So what are factors of 10? 1 times 9. If we add 1 and 9, does it come out to 7? No. 2 times 5. If we add 2 and 5, does it come out to 7? Yes. So 2 times 5, and by having the negative, that makes it negative times negative is positive. 2 times 5 is 10. And when we add 2 plus 5 is 7, but then both are negative, so that means that we have it negative. We open our parentheses, and we put x minus 2, x minus 5. If we want to check for the middle term, remember it's like terms. Remember when we did FOIL, the inside and outside, it will be become like terms, so we combine them. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. And if I have addition of negatives, that means that I end up with negative 7x. Okay? Oops. Okay, let's do some more. So in here, it's going to be negative 3. And at the bottom, we're going to have, positive 2. We're going to have positive 2. And so what two numbers multiply equals negative 3, but when we add them equals positive 2. So let's look at our table here. When we have a negative and a positive, it says, let's see if I can put this. It says one factor is positive and one is negative. And that's because for multiplication, for it to be negative, one of the two factors has to be negative, right? And we have to subtract. Not only that, but look at what I did with the symbols. When we're going to look at this symbol right here. Excuse me, sorry. And that means that if this is positive, the bigger of the two factors is going to be positive. But if at the bottom I have a negative, that means that of the two factors, the bigger one will be negative, okay? This determines the sign of the bigger factor. Okay, so again, for number 7, we have a negative, and then we have a positive in here, so the bigger factor has to be with the positive. So I might want to put positive and negative, positive and negative, positive and negative. And note that since this is positive, this is going to be the bigger one of the factors. So what two numbers multiply equals 3? The only two factors that I can think of is 1 times 3. And this is the sign of the bigger one. Which one is bigger? The 3. So 3 is going to be positive and 1 is going to be negative. That way, when I add them, in reality, remember that when the signs are different in addition, you subtract and leave the sign of the greater number. So 3 minus 1 is 2 and leave the positive. So that's why it's positive. So I'm going to put the x plus 3 minus 1. And so to check, we already know that x times x is x squared, right? That's from the first. The last, 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. But we're just checking for the middle term, right? Because it's a combination or combining like terms with the inside outside. So 3 times x is 3x. X times negative 1 is negative x. And so 3x minus x, that's 2x. So check. Okay, now we have x squared plus 5x minus 6 And we have negative 6 in here, positive 5 in here. Since this is negative and this is positive, I'm going to have one positive and one negative factor, and I have to subtract to find the one in the bottom, remembering that the greater number of the two factors will be positive. So I can think of positive 6 times negative 1, and since this is positive, that's why I left the 6 being positive. So I open my parentheses, I put x times x, which is x squared, and then use my factors plus 6 minus 1. To check, 6 times x is 6x, x times negative 1 is negative x, and so 6x minus x, it will be 5x, so check. Now we're gonna have one where there is nothing in here, and some people say like, well, do I put negative x at the bottom? Well, we're usually putting, for the bottom part, we're putting the coefficient of x, and if there is nothing in here, that means that there is a negative 1 in there. So in here we're gonna have negative 6, and then at the bottom we're gonna have negative 1. What happens when I have two negatives? Again, every time I have a negative on the product, that means that one is going to be negative, one is going to be positive. But the bottom one, which is the sign of the middle term, tells me what's the sign of the greater factor. Okay, so in here, if I do 1 times 6, I know that when we subtract them, it's not going to give me 1 times 6. 6 minus 1 is not going to be 1. It's going to be 5. So I know that doesn't work. But then I know that for 6, I also have 2 and 3. 2 and 3. And this sign is the sign of the bigger one. Which one is bigger? The 3. So that's where I put my negative. This is the sign of the bigger one when I have 1 and 1. Okay? When this is negative, 1 and 1. And the greater one has the sign of this one right here. So I open my parentheses and I put x plus 2 and then x minus 3. Again, these are the, if you remember, it will be the dimensions. One side is the measurement and then the other one will be the other measurement. Okay? So 2 times x is 2x, x times negative 3 is negative 3x, and if I have 2 boxes, but then I owe 3 boxes, that means that I owe 1 box. Okay, so check. Okay, let me see. One more, and it's x squared minus 3x minus 4. Let's see if we can do this directly. So, what are two numbers that multiply equals negative 4? It has to be 1 and 1, right? Because otherwise, if you put 2 positives or 2 negatives, then that's going to be positive, and it's not. So it has to be 1 positive and 1 negative. So, and we subtract. So 2 times 2 wouldn't work, right? Because when you subtract them, you don't get 3. 1 times 4, 1 times 4, it gives me 4. But then remember, this tells me the sign of the bigger one. So I'm going to put the negative. Since this is negative, I'm going to put the 4 with the negative. Okay, the bigger one with this sign. And 1 times 4 is negative 4. And when I subtract, 4 minus 1 is 3, but leaving the sign of the bigger one, so that's perfect. So my factors are x minus 4, x plus 1. And if I check, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and x times 1 is x. When I owe 4 boxes, but then I pay one of the boxes, that means that I owe 3 boxes only now. Now, if you want to check with the diamond because you feel more comfortable with it, you can go ahead and do that. You would have -4 in here, -3 in here. We look at the table, negative, negative. That means that I have 1 positive and 1 negative. 1 positive and 1 negative, and we're going to subtract 1 positive and 1 negative. So the 1 and the 4. And this tells me the sign of the bigger one, so I put the negative with the 4. Now when I multiply them, it's equals to -4. When I add them, 1 plus -4 is -3, okay? And again, I switch them. It doesn't really matter in this case, okay? So I hope you learned the lesson, and if not, again, you can go back and review it, or you can pause it, analyze it, come talk to me, and go ahead and do 10.4. Thank you. Bye-bye.